Hello everyone, my name is Hadel-Lynn, and today I'm going to talk to you all about the next generation NCLEX exam. I'm going to share with you all my experience on how I passed it the first time around, as well as what study materials worked for me and what didn't. If you have any further questions or concerns, make sure to leave it in the comments below. In addition, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe. And with that, let's get started. Let's talk about the timeline of when I started studying for the NCLEX. I actually started studying for the NCLEX not until maybe like a month before the exam. This was just because I was moving from one state to another. I was moving back to California. I didn't really know how long it was going to take for me to get my NCLEX, just because there's a lot of steps and procedures in order to do that. If you're interested in becoming a nurse in California, make sure to check out this video up above. For me, I wish I had the option to take the NCLEX as soon as possible, but I didn't. If you have that option, please take that option, because it will ease your anxiety about whether or not you feel prepared enough for this exam or not. Just because no matter how much studying that you do for this exam, you will never feel ready. I'm going to be quite frank with you. Let me talk to you all about the very first study guide that I used, which is the Hurst study guide. This was provided to me through my school, just because in the last week of our nursing school, they provided us a 3-day Hurst education program for the NCLEX. This piece of crap. Like, I'm sorry. It was probably the worst NCLEX review prep that I had, and let me tell you why. Now, inside this workbook, it's just kind of follow along the notes and you kind of just write. It's a fill in the blank. It sort of feels like, you know, when you're like in elementary school and you have like those packets that to do over like summer or something, you know, to learn for fun or whatever. And it just did not work for me. The videos that they used through the Hurst education, it felt very silly, but not silly enough to where I felt like I wanted to learn. It just felt silly to where it just didn't work for me. Personally, if the school did not provide that 3-day learning education through Hurst for us, I probably would not have gone out of my way to look for it, just because it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like it prepared me very well. It kind of actually confused me, and it confused a lot of my classmates on what exactly was going on. And to be kind of honest, during that Hurst 3-day NCLEX prep review, it just felt like so much information all at once. Even when I looked over this workbook later down the line, it still just felt like too much information at once for me, and it just was not in a way that would help me prepare best. So I would say, I'm sorry, Hurst is probably the worst one in my opinion. The next study material that I tried to use was the Mometrix. Mometrix was actually the company that I used for when I was preparing for my TEAS exam. So I figured, you know, if it was good during my TEAS exam, maybe it'll be good for my NCLEX. And personally, I came across the same problem that I did with Hurst, where it just felt like, look how big this book is. It just felt like too much information. The way that it's written, I love that it's very detailed, but for me, quite honestly, this is not the way that I'm gonna learn material that well. It just doesn't feel very interactive, and you know, it just feels like a lot, to be honest. And I don't even know how accurate this is. I probably touched maybe like 10 pages of this book before I decided to quit. Mometrix overall is a very good company, but to be honest, I wouldn't really recommend this book if you're kind of more of an interactive learner, just because it just didn't feel like I had an opportunity to ask questions or really learn from someone. This just kind of felt like memorize everything and just hope for the best, which that's not what the NCLEX is. The NCLEX is a test regarding critical thinking and skills, and it could test you on anything. That's the only problem. If I knew what was on it, like section by section, like this amount of questions, maybe Mometrix would be best for me, but it's not. All right, let's talk about Mark Klimek. Mark Klimek videos really helped me out. They were probably the first step in the right direction in terms of how to best study for the NCLEX. Mark Klimek videos were recommended to me by a lot of my classmates who had taken the NCLEX before me. And, you know, it really helped familiarize them with what exactly is the exam, what's the exam format, what exactly is it trying to ask you, just because we knew so much about how the NCLEX is just, you gotta pass in order to be a nurse, but it was never really explained to us in detail, like what exactly is it questioning us on and what's the format of the questions. Mark Klimek is really good for just kind of familiarizing yourself with the exam and kind of going over a general overview of each system, as well as from the perspective of someone who has actually written the NCLEX questions before, really kind of figure out what language that you could come across. So it's good for getting yourself familiar with the exam. However, for me, it didn't feel like enough for me to really feel ready for the exam. It just kind of felt more like something that I would use to just kind of get familiar with. So I did purchase something on Etsy where it had all of the videos as well as notes that I could annotate, as well as the famous Mark Klimek book. But unfortunately, that just was not interactive enough for me. I'm sorry, I'm a very interactive learner if you haven't noticed. So Mark Klimek, I would say it's a good idea to listen to Mark Klimek if you just feel very lost in the whole studying for the NCLEX part. Okay, we are gonna go over the biggest debate, Uworld versus Archer. So Uworld, it was provided through my school because we had to do a lot of questions and prep throughout my entire school process. So it was really helpful because it was already included in my student fees. I would say Uworld is very helpful for people who already know the material pretty well. Like you're coming out of nursing school already, right out of nursing school, and then you're taking it. It goes into very hyper-specific details, questions, a lot more than you might need to. I would say Uworld is very good for people who they need to feel challenged, where you need questions that are harder, so that way when it comes to the exam, it feels easier. Personally, that didn't really help me just because it's gonna take me a month or so after from when I went to school. So I needed a more general overview of everything. But if you feel comfortable with everything already, Uworld is the way to go. Their practice questions are very, very in depth. I will say that it's extremely helpful for people who already kind of have an idea of what they're doing. Archer, I loved it so much. So I purchased the $89 discounted combo from Archer, and that was all that I needed, honestly. It allowed me to really study each system. They have these very in-depth videos about each system of the body, as well as a standard study plan for like, okay, you're gonna take the exam in X amount of weeks. This is what you need to study. Like I needed more hand-holding in terms of how to prep for the exam. So if you need something more hand-holding, Archer is definitely the best one to do it. And they have a lot of interactive things. Their questions, I would say, were at the same level of what the NCLEX was. I did recognize actually a few questions, like a few variations of the questions from the NCLEX itself. But I would say Archer was my best bet because I had a longer amount of time to take the exam from when I graduated. And so I didn't remember everything, and that's fine. I'm not supposed to remember everything. So it allowed me to really like take notes. And by the way, their videos are so helpful. Their videos were incredible. I loved Archer so much. Archer allowed you to have questions in relation to each system of the body, as well as give you a very in-depth exam preparation plan, which is exactly what I needed. They have these videos that are so in detail, very visual, as well as they give you the PDF notes that you can just kind of fill out as you go and that you can compare the answers later on. It was money very well spent. I would say Archer really helped me feel secure and safe for the NCLEX. Let me talk to you all about how I felt the day of the exam and just leading up to the exam. Archer really helped me feel prepared and ready, but each day closer to the exam, I was just like, oh my God, help me. But when I went into the exam itself, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of blacked out. You could not ask me what questions were on there. I have no idea. Plus, I took this exam like 6 months ago, so it's been way too long. There was so many things going on. We almost were unable to take the exam. First off, this exam was on Halloween day. This was my fault. I should not have picked a day on Halloween, but whatever. And then on top of that, there were technical difficulties logging us into the exam itself. So we were almost not allowed to take the exam. So I was already stressed out of like, oh my God, what if I have to drive out here again? And then the third thing was like just having to put yourself in the lockers, having to have everything ready. You know, you're being watched while taking this exam. And so just like beware of that you're literally being like patted down and stuff. But anyways, once I started the exam, I was like, okay, cool. All right, we're doing this. Like it felt very fair, to be honest. There were things that I didn't know. I'm going to be quite frank. I didn't know everything, and I don't think the NCLEX expects you to know everything. However, once I past 85 questions, I was like, why are there more questions? Because when I was doing the Archer and Uworld and all these other preps, you know, it stopped me at 85 questions. It said like, okay, you're solid. So that's what I was kind of used to. But I was like, why does it keep going? Make it stop. I think I made it probably like 100 something questions. And the second I finished, I walked out of the exam room. I remember this clearly. And my mom was waiting for me when I was getting out. The second I saw her, I started sobbing because I was like, oh my God, Mom, there's no way that I passed. Like, I'm going to have to pay how much money again to do this? I'm going to have to spend so much time. This is awful. I should have taken this exam back in Boston. And my mom's like, you're going to be fine, whatever. Okay, what I really hate though is that the computer knows whether or not you passed. I wish they had I don't care if I have to pay extra money for the shit, but there needs to be an option where once you finish the exam, it'll say pass or fail, like the second you're done. So that way you can walk out of the exam room knowing how you did, because the computer already knows. The computer already knows whether or not you pass. I hate that I had to wait a day after to find out if I passed or not. That's so much anxiety to have. But yes, like the general consensus that I have gotten from all of my friends, if you feel like complete and utter shit, basically, from taking the exam, there's a good chance that you probably passed. Now, let me talk to you all about tips to best prepare for the NCLEX. Please study before taking the NCLEX. Do not be those people who are like, okay, I'm not gonna bother studying. No, please study for the NCLEX. There are things that you probably have forgotten. It may be like the easiest things in the world, but since you haven't done it for a while, like you probably have forgotten it. So just revise over everything that you need, just because like every point matters and you never know what's going to be on this exam. That's the hard thing about the NCLEX, is that it's not based on like, oh, this will have X amount of questions, this will have X amount of questions. It could be about anything, and that's kind of the hard thing. The next tip that I would highly recommend is, if you know already, after you book the NCLEX, location, date, and time, if it's a place that you're not familiar with, try practicing how to get there. So that way, when it comes like exam day, you're not anxious of like, oh my God, how am I gonna find parking? Where's this? Where's this? Because if you feel like so anxious, then it's not gonna help you for your exam date at all. Next is slow down when taking the questions, and that just because you're going past 85 questions does not mean that you automatically failed. I thought I automatically failed after going past 85 questions, because that's what a lot of my classmates, they stopped at 85 questions. So I just assumed it was gonna be me as well, like stopping at 85. But when I kept going past 85, I was like, why does it keep going? Make it stop. But I luckily paced myself pretty well. Try not to burn yourself out really quick, because this exam is, you get a lot of time for it. You get like several hours. Take as much time as you need. Like, don't try and compare yourself to the other people in the room, because everyone has a different exam. It's all computer generated. So you're not going to have the same exam, and you're not going to have the same experience. If you fail, taking the exam, this does not mean that you are not meant to become a nurse. Again, the NCLEX is just a prerequisite in order to have a job as a nurse. The majority of the skills that you're doing as a nurse, you're gonna learn on the job, to be quite honest. It's important to have some of the book knowledge in order to become a nurse, but you don't have to remember everything on the fly. You'll learn it as you go. So if you don't pass the first time around, that doesn't mean nursing is not meant for you. It just means you need to figure out what went wrong and what you can do to improve for the next time around. Now, for me, another tip is, if you know that your exam results are not going to come for a few days, try and preoccupy yourself for the next few days. The second that I left the exam room, I just spent the whole day like in my room. Like, I didn't want to be out and about. I was too sad. Like, I was just too anxious and sad. And that's okay. It's okay to have a day to where you just want to cuddle up in your bed and just cry and feel like awful. The next day, I went to work because I had a job as a nursing assistant back then. And, going to work actually kind of helped me feel a little bit better, just because I had a task. I was literally getting paid to be distracted, which was incredibly helpful. And then for me in California, we find out our exam results the next day at 5 p.m., which is so long. that takes so long. But I was working day shift, so my day went by really quick, and I had a timer on my phone. But so by the time that the timer went off, I was like, oh my God, like I didn't even realize how much time has passed. So, you know, try and keep yourself busy if you know that it's going to take a few days for sure. Oh, one tip that I forgot to mention is that review the Beautiful Nursing 1 hour NCLEX comprehensive review video. That video, pure gold. Like, it was probably the best free material that is out there, just because it goes over a little bit of everything in a way that's so easy to understand. You know, that I would say that's probably a first free step in order to review for the exam, just because, you know, it goes over everything in a very easy manner, and, you know, you can always go back to it if you want to. But yes, highly recommend going over that video. Thank you again for watching this video. I hope this video helps you kind of feel a little bit more at ease about the experience of taking the NCLEX, how to best prepare, and kind of what not to do, as well as, you know, trying to figure out what works best for you. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe, as well as if you have any further questions or concerns, make sure to leave it in the comments below. And with that, I wish you all a very good day and a very good night.